Hello and welcome to AMC Mailbag, the show dedicated to answering your movie-based questions. You can submit your questions anytime, anywhere, any place at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. They may be answered on the AMC Movie Talk show between Monday and Friday or right here on Mailbag. Hi there, my name's Maud Garrett. I'm in the host seat today, and joining me at the table to answer all of your questions, it is AMC's Editor-in-Chief, John Campea.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today, and thank you again to Maud for filling in for Ashley as she's out and away. So thanks again for being here.
Oh, my pleasure.
You did a fantastic job yesterday, by the way.
Hey, thank you so much for
Very
that.
good.
I appreciate your compliments. Let's get straight into it. We've got one from Alejandro Padilla who writes, "Hey AMC Movie Talk, I always hear you guys talk about Star Wars. Yeah! And I feel left out. Oh, I've never seen any of the movies and it would really help out if I knew where to start in that big movie world. Thanks and love the show."
Well, it just so happens that Maud Garrett and we co-host a show called AMC Jedi Council.
Well, what do you know?
That not only talks about all things Star Wars, but we try to make it nice and soft as an introductory, as a gateway drug into the Star Wars universe, as a matter of fact. So you should check that out. It is on our AMC Theaters YouTube channel. Just look for AMC Jedi Council. Now, that being said, it is actually kind of weird that this question came up because just a little bit earlier we were talking to Alicia Malone, who's on the AMC team. And she was saying, it'd be really good. She's back there. She goes, it'd be really good. We should do like a video for people who don't know Star Wars, like a little video that tells people how to get into Star Wars, like a crash course in Star Wars. And so we were just talking about that would be cool. But here we go. If you're asking about how do you get into them, what's the order you get into them and all that kind of stuff. Now, understand this. I really dislike the prequels. And there are people out there who really like them.
I don't like them, but I will try and defend them.
Right. So and there are people out there who do actually like the prequels. They enjoy them, and maybe you'll be one of them. I doubt it, but maybe you'll be one of them. So there are lots of people out there who like the prequels. I do not. So normally when people ask me, "Hey John, I've not seen Star Wars before, how should I watch them?" I suggest watching them like this. Episode 4, which is the original Star Wars film, Episode 5, which is Empire Strikes Back, and then Episode 6, which is Return of the Jedi. I would personally just not watch the prequels, because when Episode 7 comes out, you're not going to be missing anything. Trust me, there's not going to be a part of Episode 7 that you won't get because you didn't watch the prequels. Just watch Episodes 4, 5, and 6, and then move forward. And then after that, if you then count yourself as a big Star Wars fan, then I'd suggest go back and watch the prequels, because even though they're not for me or most sane human beings, you might actually enjoy them. I like to poke at them a lot, but there are people out there who really like them, and maybe you'll be one of them. But I say get into Star Wars first, and then if you count yourself as a big fan, then go back and give the prequels a shot, and maybe they'll be for you.
If you're wondering what is in the prequels that you could find out about in these movies, it's basically how Vader became Darth Vader. And once you watch the original trilogy, you'll realize he's probably the most badass villain there is in the galactic world, universe, etc. So basically you'll see what is like from a boy, 9 years of age, going up to the path of a Jedi and then turning to the dark side. There's also a really cool fight sequence in there in The Phantom Menace, and you get to know what pod racing is, which was really cool if you played video games, and they had games out too.
I love the pod race scene. I do. I know a lot of people who don't like the pod race scene, and I hate the prequels, but even why? I will say I really enjoy the pod race scene.
That's because they say, "That's wizard."
There are things in the pod race scene that are awful. The lousy Howard Cosell race commentary. Oh, here comes Andy Skywalker.
Now that's pod racing.
Oh my God. No, okay, now I'm just getting angry. I'm just getting mad again.
So basically, to summarize, the original trilogy, if you liked that and want to know the origin story to Anakin, then dive into the prequels, but it's definitely something to do before The Force Awakens comes out.
Yep, absolutely.
If they're a reader, or if they do like video games and they kind of want to know a bit more, where else could they go outside of movies?
Wow, well, absolutely. Even if you're a reader or video games, I would still start with the original trilogy. That's where you start and where you go from there. As far as video games, man, stuff that involves the Old Republic, both Knights of the Old Republic and the MMO, The Old Republic, are great stories to get into. They go into thousands of years of the past, so it doesn't really affect what you're doing now, but that's a great set of games to get into. As far as a novel goes, after you read the original trilogy, we just talked about this on AMC Jedi Council actually, there's a novel out right now that is officially a part of Star Wars canon, like it's actual Star Wars history, called Tarkin. I highly, highly, highly recommend reading Tarkin, but once again, it all starts with watching the original trilogy.
Fantastic, and may the Force be with you.
Yes.
by the way, Alejandro. We've got one from Emerson Williams who writes, "Hello, AMC Movie Crew. My question is about the Divergent series, Insurgent. If Insurgent is poorly received and as bad as it looks, will the studio be willing to make the sequel, or is it solely dependent on the box office? Thanks and keep up the fantastic work."
It is solely dependent on the box office. Nothing else but box office. Look, they're already planning to do the third one, which is called Allegiant.
In part 1 and 2.
Oh, yes, they're splitting that up into 2 parts. So anyway, yeah, they're going to be doing that. But it doesn't matter if the movie is awesome. If it fails at the box office, it's done. It doesn't matter if the movie is the worst movie ever made. If it makes tons of money, they're going to move ahead with the next 2 things.
Transformers 4.
Yeah, exactly.
Got a cough.
So, I mean, that's just the way it goes. So, look, they're already planning for the Allegiant films, right? They're already planning. They've already announced who the cast is and all that kind of stuff. But no matter how much, the best laid plans of Mice and Men, no matter how much they say they've planned, if the next Divergent film comes out, which I believe might be, is it this weekend?
Yeah.
If it comes out? It's this weekend. That's saying it's this weekend. If it comes out and it flops at the box office and it loses tons of money, doesn't matter how much the studio says, we're planning on doing these 2-part of the last book and blah, blah, it'll be done. They will not do it. They are not going to jump out there, spend another $100 million on making and marketing a film when they know they're going to lose, 20, 30, 40, $50 million. They're just going to pull the plug and quit while they're ahead. Now, that being said, I think you'd be a fool to think that this movie's going to flop. It's not. The original had a lot of fans and a lot of people who really, really enjoyed it. And I think you're going to see a lot of people are going to be running out to check this one. What's this one say? Insurgent trailing Divergent by nearly 20% of the box office, which that's the funny thing. I was going to say, I believe this movie is going to take a step back financially, but the last one made so much money that they're okay. They can make less money than the first one did, and they'll still be okay. The only way I see them pulling the plug is if it absolutely flops, and I just don't think it's going to absolutely flop.
Right. They're hoping, they're estimating it'll be around the mid $40 million range.
For opening weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, and that which wouldn't be bad for an opening weekend.
That's not bad at all. Do you think we'll see a part 1 and 2 then? Will we completely see the rest of the series? And what were your thoughts on Insurgent?
Well, here's the thing. If they do parts 1 and they go ahead with Allegiant parts 1 and part 2, right? I believe they're going to do the new trendy thing, which is shoot them back to back. They're going to shoot them at the same time. That's actually a really smart thing to do because it dramatically lowers your production costs. When you just shoot it all at once, it brings your production cost down a lot. So if they do part 1, which I have every reason to believe they will, then I believe it's an automatic lock that they'll do part 2 because they'll just shoot them at the same time. So what was the second part of your question?
Like, I was asking what you thought of Insurgent, but I'm going to change that to, do you believe that having a part 1 and a part 2 is worth it for the audience member?
It totally depends on the book that they're splitting. You look at the Harry Potter things. I always defended the Harry Potter finishing their films by splitting the last 2 because that last book is a freaking tome. It's like this thick. I mean, it's intimidating. It's so big. There's so much in that book. It is easily split into 2 films. That was a no-brainer. The Hobbit being split into 3, The Hobbit that's like this thick of a book. 2, I was okay with. 3, I was like, well, if Peter Jackson says, turns out it was a mistake that they split into 3. That should have been a 2-part series. And I think dramatically it would have been much better if they did it that way. The Hunger Games one, while I really loved Mockingjay Part 1, I really did enjoy it. The problem is it was all set up. And now we got to wait a year to get to nothing but all payoff. And I've talked about this a lot on the show. And I think the payoff isn't going to be as impactful because we're going to be a year separated from the emotional setup for it. And it's going to feel, I think, a little bit flimsy. It really depends on the book. Having not read any of the Divergent books, I cannot say whether it's a good or a bad idea to split the last one in half. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
Alrighty then. Lawrence Kaneohe says, Aloooha AMC Crew.
Woo!
With new Star Wars canon coming out, do you think a lot of people who invested time and money into the old canon feel cheated?
Well, here's the thing. What he's talking about here is there has been what they used to call the Star Wars expanded universe. That's all the stuff, all the books and comic books and games that weren't actually part of the movies. They were called expanded universe. Now, you're asking the question, your wording is this, people invested time and money in the old canon books. Here's the thing. None of that stuff was ever canon. Now, over at Lucasfilm, they had, I think, like 7 different levels of canon, but there was only ever one true level of canon, and they referred to that as G canon. G standing for George, the creator of the movies. And really, the only things at the time that were G canon were the movies, and the movies were it. Not even when Clone Wars, the cartoon, first came out, everybody say, well, Clone Wars is canon. Yes. But then the people at Lucasfilm specified it's canon, but it's not canon. It's not G canon. Now, when Disney bought it, they changed that. Rebels became a part of the true ultimate canon. Now they only have one level of canon, which is it's either canon or it's not. So the Heir to the Empire series, which I love and adore, the Rogue Squadron series, which actually some of the books are really awful, but some of them are really quite good. The Prime, the New Jedi Order, like all these types of stuff, the comic books, the games, all these things, they were never actually canon. They were just great stories to be told. And a good way to put it is, think of, if you're into comic books, think of Old Man Logan. Old Man Logan is a beloved comic book, but it's not Marvel canon. It's an Elseworld kind of a comic book. But that doesn't stop the people who adore and love Old Man Logan from loving and adoring it, because it's a great story. It doesn't matter that it's not actually canon in the X-Men universe. It doesn't matter. And for that reason, when Disney bought out Lucasfilm and they all announced, and Lucasfilm said that none of that stuff is canon anymore, only the Rebels, Clone Wars, and the movies, only that is canon, and all the stuff moving forward. As somebody who completely loves and adores the Thrawn trilogy, it doesn't take one bit away from my enjoyment and love of the Thrawn trilogy. Yeah, it's not officially canon, but I always knew it wasn't officially canon, and I still loved it anyway. So if you're somebody, I got a buddy of mine named Rodney who's like got literally floor to ceiling stacks of all expanded universe stuff. And he loves that stuff. So if you're somebody like my buddy Rodney, you've invested all that money in all that stuff, they're still great stories. You shouldn't like them any less just because they've now made it official that it's not really canon. I think you should be just fine.
Do you think that we'll see more and more, now that we are moving forward, that they will borrow from things that have happened in Expanded Universe? Certain characters, certain situations, certain relationships that have developed. Do you think, well, that's kind of already been done, let's just do it?
Yeah, we see them already doing that in the Star Wars universe. What they said when they made this big switch in canon, it's like, now this is what's official, this is what's not. The Lucasfilm representative said, now, the new creators are free to reach into the old Expanded Universe and take things that they like and bring them into canon if they so choose. But until that happens, that ain't canon. So if J.J. Abrams or Ryan Johnson or Josh Trank or whatever decide that they want to use Grand Admiral Thrawn, then they have the freedom to reach into the expanded universe. All the things that happen in their story aren't real, but they can still take that character and plant that character in their story and build around him however they choose. So it's going to be interesting moving forward to see, will they bring in Mara Jade? Will they bring in Darth Bane? Will they do this? Well, who knows? But it's exciting to see where they may go.
So it's not over yet.
Not over yet.
You can hold on. We've got one from Cuevas who says, seeing the success of Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man and how he has very much owned that role to play Iron Man in already 4 movies with many more to come, John had mentioned that Ryan Reynolds could be doing any movie he wants but chooses to devote his time to the upcoming DeadPool movie. My question is, could this be because Ryan sees the bigger picture here and plans on doing the exact same thing with DeadPool? By that, I mean owning the role and bringing us a blockbuster hit movie with plans for multiple sequels and spin-offs. Can't wait to hear y'all's response.
Well, there's a couple things to keep in mind here. Number one, the main reason why Ryan Reynolds is doing Deadpool is because he has been the champion for Deadpool. He has been the one pushing the agenda for Deadpool for years. He's a huge Deadpool fan. He has wanted this movie to get made, and he's the one who's just not allowed people to forget about it. So there's that. But is he also trying to pull a Robert Downey Jr.?
And also a Hugh Jackman.
And also, well, Hugh Jackman is a little bit of a different case in that Hugh Jackman, nobody outside of Australia knew who Hugh Jackman was.
Fair.
So that was kind of his breaking role for him when he played Wolverine. But a lot of people forget, and we bring this up once in a while, we all know Robert Downey Jr. as this big, mega international movie star. You forget, before Iron Man, he was done. He was done. I mean, he had a lot of personal problems, very well documented. We don't need to go into them here, and which kind of totally derailed his career. Remember, he was an Academy Award nominee for Chaplin, right? But then his career got crushed because he got into a lot of personal problems. That were his own making, but personal problems. Then he started to mount a little bit of a comeback. And he was with Harrison Ford's wife in that Ally McBeal. He got one of the new main leading man kind of role in Ally McBeal, and he was doing really well in it. relapsed back into his personal problems. They fired him off the show, and he was done again. And then he started doing a little role here and there, and kind of doing well because he's a great actor, but he was done. There was a big fight to get him into the role of Tony Stark. And it caught a lot of people by surprise when they announced him as Tony Stark. It was a gamble. But what did it do for him? It has made him the big icon international movie star again. That's what that did for him. Is Ryan Reynolds looking at what happened with him? Ryan Reynolds isn't covered with personal problems and all that kind of stuff, but he saw what a really successful, beloved comic book character that people love and enjoy, when you embody that role, what that can turn you into. Ryan Reynolds did this because he loves Deadpool, but I think we'd all be a little bit naive not to believe that he looked at the example of Robert Downey Jr. and thought, I can get me some of that.
Do you think that Ryan Reynolds wants to redeem himself because he actually has played Deadpool before, but it was done it was so forgettable and abhorrently done because they sewed the mouth of the Merc with the mouth. That was a sharp pain inside my heart when that happened. Do you think that he was like, same thing, Deadpool's my favorite character. I played him in the worst way possible. I want to play him the way I know he should be played.
You know what the funny thing about that is that up until the point when they, first of all, took him out of the movie and then brought him back in the movie with his mouth sewn shut, and that wasn't even Deadpool anymore. Up until that point, in that short 15 minutes he's in the movie, he was great. Yes. He was a great Wade Wilson. I mean, yeah, he wasn't deformed, didn't have the mask, but man, he had the mouth, he had the wit, he had the moves. I mean, that was a great early stages Wade Wilson. It was awesome, and then they gutted him.
That was so insulting.
And turned it into a complete joke. I have yet to hear, I almost want to buy that movie on Blu-ray and hope they have some type of explanation in the extra features. You know, in this scene, listen to the commentary. Now, we thought about having him talk more and have some really great exchange with Wolverine, but we thought, you know what would be good?
Yeah.
Let's sew his mouth shut. Like,
yeah, great idea.
What? It was so ridiculous. I think you're absolutely right. I think a part of that passion about wanting to get this movie made has got to be not just he's got to redeem himself. He did fine. Ryan Reynolds was fine in that role. He needed to redeem Deadpool. Deadpool needed to be redeemed. He knew that the image of Deadpool that all these moviegoers in North America have cannot be what they showed him in that Wolverine film. It's got to be the right Deadpool. It's got to be the Merc with a mouth. It's got to be let's do it right, and hopefully that's what they're about to give us.
Awesome. That's exciting. Kyle Pauletti says, hey guys, you've recently talked about how a Game of Thrones movie prequel could work because it doesn't limit the audience to only the people who watch the show. It got me thinking about a Sons of Anarchy prequel about how the first 9 found the club. Interested? Thanks and keep up the good work.
Well, as a matter of fact, the creator of Sons of Anarchy has already talked that he's in the early stages of planning an original 9 TV series, probably like a one season shot TV series about the formation of the Sons of Anarchy and stuff like that. Sons of Anarchy, though, everybody knows how much I love Sons of Anarchy. Like our whole nickname for the AMC crew is Samco, is the Sons of AMC, and we use that a lot. I'm a big fan of it. But Sons of Anarchy, looking at it from a strictly business point of view, did not have the following that Game of Thrones has. Nor is it in that kind of a world. Like with Game of Thrones, I should say, you are in a fantastical, mythology kind of world that you can do almost anything in. And when you talk about doing these prequels to Game of Thrones, I say you go back like 500 years into the War of the Dragons, and let's go back to when we see the Throne of Swords being forged, and there's so much you can do because you can then watch that movie even if you've never seen a single episode of the Game of Thrones TV series, and then hopefully that movie gets everybody even more into the idea of watching the Game of Thrones. There is a strategy here that can be done, but it can't be applied across the board. I believe that same strategy doesn't work with like a Sons of Anarchy or 99% of other TV shows. I believe Game of Thrones is uniquely positioned where something like that could work, and maybe a couple of other shows, but as much as it hurts me to say it, I don't think that would work for Sons of Anarchy.
So going back to a conversation I think we had yesterday was to let go of the idea of having an origin story, but Game of Thrones, because there's so much of a big expanded world, there's enough room to have a different time and era.
See, what I don't want to see, I don't want to see Ned Stark's origin story. I want to go back.
He's just going to die anyway.
I want to go back 200 years, 500 years. So it's almost an entirely different, playground for them to make their movie where, once again, if you get into the Ned Stark origin story, you go back 10 years or whatever, now you're going to alienate people who haven't watched the show because they're not going to understand how is any of this supposed to be relevant. You go 100 years in the past, 500 years in the past.
We're talking pre-Targaryen era?
Depending on how far back you want to go, as long as it's multiple generations before the characters that we know now, so that somebody can come in and watch it from the start, having never seen a Game of Thrones TV show and not be lost at all.
The Tales of Old Nan.
There you go.
Oh.
I still want to see the Dragon Wars. I want to see the wars that involve the dragons. That's what I want to see.
Where are my dragons? That's exactly right. Snake Swallowing Sushi says, hello, happy AMC people, and greetings from Tokyo. Ohayou gozaimasu. My question is regarding period movies and how you would define it. Would a movie that takes place 5 years ago be considered a period piece? Probably not, right? Well, what about 20 years ago? 40 years ago? How far back does the setting have to go in order for you to consider a movie a period piece?
That's a very, very good question. To be honest with you, I can tell you what I define it as, okay? I define it as, and this could be totally wrong, if there is some actual definition out there that Hollywood says, this is what a period piece is, I don't know. Personally, I look at it this way. A movie is a period piece when in creating the movie, you have to recreate the world. And so you do a film that is based in the 1920s. Okay, what you now have to do is you cannot just show Main Street that's outside our door in Burbank. You have to recreate the street. You have to re-wardrobe everybody who's walking down the streets. You have to, go out and get period music that plays over the radio at that time. You have to pull out all the TVs and put it in different TVs. Basically, the world looks different. You have to remake it from the ground up. Boardwalk Empire is a great example of that. They had to recreate that world because it's not what the modern world is. I think when you have to go back far enough to the point that you have to recreate the world that this story is supposed to be taken in, that at that point becomes a period piece. A movie about the 1990s, maybe you have to change a store shop sign here and there and maybe put different sneakers on a guy, but it's not, you don't have to totally recreate the world, right? The world still kind of looks like the world looked like in the 1990s. But once you get into the 60s, once you get into the 1800s, once you get into the 1700s, 1920s, when you got to rebuild the world from the ground up, it's a period piece to me. That's my how would you define it?
I think it would be going back into actually how you see history. So is it in the ancient Grecian times, Roman times? Is it the Industrial Revolution, the French Revolution? I think if you can look back into history and say that was a particular time, then that is the particular period, thus making it a period piece. Because I think that at the moment in the 60s, it's not really, it's the swinging 60s, baby, but it's not necessarily at a particular period in time yet. So okay. I think it's a little bit further back because when someone goes, I watched this great period piece movie the other day, what era would you think of? Around Jane Austen time?
That's the first place my mind goes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm.
The important thing is, guys, tell us how would you define a period piece? Jump in the comment section. Let us know your thoughts on what defines a period piece and what does not. I'd be curious to hear your impressions of that.
Yeah, snake swallowing sushi, great question. And ohayou gozaimasu. Ryan Nem says, hey guys, congrats on all the success. My question is, I've been a supporter of Shia LaBeouf, but with his recent troubles, do you think we will ever see him come back and be a decent box office draw?
Well, I don't know that any actor today is in and of themselves a box office draw. I think the era is different now. The era that we live in now is that getting a credible, actor's name is now, the purpose is not because his name will bring box office. No, it's his name or her name brings credibility to the movie. Because a lot of times I think a lot of average film goers, they look at a movie poster and say, I don't know anybody who's in this movie, and therefore they're not interested. If they look at a poster, maybe it's not their favorite movie star, it's like, oh, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person. To them now, right or wrong, I'm not saying this is right, but it's kind of the way it works out. Now in their heads, this movie now has credibility to them, and they'll consider going and checking it out. So I don't think Shia LaBeouf has ever been, nor will he ever be, a box office draw. The question is, will people trust him and want to use him and not turn people off? I don't think there are that many people turned off by Shia LaBeouf. I don't think there are that many people out there who follow the news, the movie news, stories and all that kind of stuff that really know about the personal problems that he's had. And let's face it, in the last couple of years alone, he's had some terrific performances. Fury, Charlie Countryman, Lawless. He was great in all of those films. If I am a director, I'm putting him in a movie of mine. If I got a role that I think he'd be great for, I think he's a terrific actor. He'll bring me a great performance. Maybe I don't build a movie around him, but if you're in a role like Fury, where you got somebody else as the main face of the film, but I need somebody who can deliver a great performance to really boister up that film. I trust Shia LaBeouf. I still do. Don't forget, Shia LaBeouf for a long time was like Steven Spielberg's golden boy. Spielberg like pegged him as a huge Hollywood talent. And I tend to trust Spielberg's, maybe not his being able to gauge their personalities, but he's a perfect gauge of talent. And I would totally go for him.
So you don't think he's a liability?
I don't think he's a liability anymore. I honestly don't think enough people follow, movie news stuff enough as what's going on in their personal lives. Some people have heard of it, but I think we forget about it so quickly. And he hasn't had any more incidents in a long time.
Which is a good thing, because if he does, then his current case means that he'll actually get arrested.
Right, yes. Well, there's, like I said, personal issues, whatever. But if I'm a director, I have no problem using Shia LaBeouf.
And you think that he's a good actor?
I think he's a terrific actor. I really, really do.
And that's what's important at the end of the day. We've got one from Dustin Mann, who says, greetings from Hawaii. Aloha. I'm asking about the new Ryan Reynolds and Ben Kingsley movie, Selfless, and why there is no word of it anywhere. I stumbled on the trailer, but there was no mention of it anywhere, not even on AMC Movie Talk. It has 2 big-name actors and looks interesting. I'm asking, how do movies like this slip under the radar, and if it's the studio's fault or marketing? Thanks. Bring on the filthy.
This is marketing's fault, because I'll be honest with you, it slipped under my radar for a while. Like I remember hearing and talking about this movie about a year ago, and then it's been out of sight, out of mind. And you're right, this trailer dropped like a week or 2 weeks ago, and it completely flew under my radar. Crazy. Actually, the movie looks fairly interesting. It's got a little bit of a, what was that one with Bradley Cooper? Was it Limitless? That was
Yes.
Bradley Cooper and Robert De Niro?
Cornish, yeah.
It had a bit of that feel to it. What's that? Yeah, it was. It had a little bit of that feel to it, but the concept is really cool. Like this rich billionaire dude, he's offered a chance that he can transfer his consciousness into a younger body, being Ryan Reynolds' body. And they tell him that it's just a body, it's a lifeless body. They transfer him into that, but then later, he realized, after he's been transferred into that guy's body, he realizes, wait a minute, no, this wasn't just some dude. They kidnapped this dude. They comatose this dude, and his memories are still in my head. And now he's got this moral dilemma, plus a real danger is now present, because that Ryan Reynolds consciousness is coming back now and starting to force its way back to the forefront. And like, now he's faced with these moral questions. Do I have the right to suppress Ryan Reynolds and stop him from taking back his body? Or should I allow myself to die and my consciousness die so Ryan Reynolds can get his rightful life? Like, I mean, it looks really cool. So there's like elements of sci-fi, moral dilemmas, like a thriller aspect to it too. This movie might be horrible, but the trailer to me looked really good. I think, Dennis, can you look up for me? There's a third name in the movie. I think it's Matthew Good.
It's Matthew Good, and it's been directed by Tarsem Singh.
That's right. And it's a Tarsem Singh movie, which does not play in its favor, to be quite frank with you. But look, to me, it looks really interesting. So I completely personally put this on the marketing of the film. They're not doing a good job to put this film in front of people's faces and make them aware of it.
Why, with these 2 big names attached, and even more in the cast if you keep poking around, why don't you think that this is a movie that they would put all the dollars behind?
You know what? The funny thing is, I don't feel like they're putting any dollars behind it, like at all.
It's supposed to be coming out in the UK on the 24th of July.
Yeah, and I think it might come out here even before that, if I'm not mistaken. But here's the thing. The only thing I am left to think about, because here's the problem. You don't like to speculate too much, but when the studios don't tell you anything, all you've got left is your speculation. That's all you have to talk about is your speculation. And so, studios, if you're not going to tell us what's going on with this movie, I am only left to assume you hate the movie. Honestly, that's the only thing you're giving us here to sit with, is that you must not trust this movie. You must not like this movie. And now you're kind of trying to hide the movie. Maybe put it out, get $1 million or $2 back, whatever. But it feels like you're trying to hide the film at this point. I hope I'm wrong. I hope this movie's awesome. I thought the trailer was quite good. I enjoyed it. But you're showing no trust in this film, so that's all I've got left to think about.
And Ryan Reynolds, in fairness, has actually done a movie where his body swapped before with Jason Bateman in The Change Up.
That's right.
So we know he's capable of doing the old body swap thing.
That's true.
Amongst other things. That is actually all the questions
That's
that
all
we've
of them.
got. That's it.
All
We
right.
are done today.
Wow.
If you didn't get your question in today, don't fear. You can submit your questions anytime, anywhere. Just look up AMC Movie Talk at gmail.com. If your question's not actually read out in mailbag, it could be read out in Movie Talk Monday through to Friday. If you did like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, then do it. now. If you want the audio version of this show, there is a link in the description of this video. And if you're in the mood for a movie, well, good news for you. There's plenty of good movies happening at the moment. Just look up amctheatres.com. You can see your nearest cinema and the local times there as well. John Campea, where can people find you?
You guys can follow me on Twitter or on Facebook. Just follow me at John Campea.
And I am at Maud Garrett on all social medias. And a big shout out to not only Jonathan, but to Dennis for helping out with the show today. And we'll catch you next time.